1868, Mother's blood spawns generational nightmare. Sinister warning, what you are about to discover has permanently altered the lives of those who investigated this case. If this video fails to receive your interaction, algorithms ensure that disturbing content like this will disappear from recommendations. This may be your only chance to learn secrets that have haunted investigators for decades. Chronicle of the Forbidden Mysteries. Haunted Special Edition, 1868. Mother's blood spawns generational nightmare. Terrifying discovery reveals experiments that defy nature. Exclusive investigation exposes maternal conspiracy that still haunts today. Narrated by Dr. Septimus Graves, pathologist who was never the same after these discoveries. Brave readers, prepare yourselves to discover truths that have disturbed investigators for generations. For years, whispers in Bowling Green's shadowy corner spoke of a woman whose womb produced not mere children, but vessels of calculated violence. What we uncovered transcends the worst fears of human imagination. The case of Margaret Blackwood, a mother from Kentucky, exposes a sinister conspiracy that extends to the darkest circles of post-Civil War experimental breeding practices. This is not Gothic fiction. Every line has been verified through documents that should never have survived the passage of time. In 1868, while America celebrated Reconstruction, a secret organization known only as the Maternal Bloodline Collective conducted experiments that transformed innocent births into vessels for generational violence. Margaret Blackwood was selected not by chance, but for characteristics that made her the perfect specimen for their diseased obsessions with blood inheritance. Terrifying transformation documented in photographs. Confidential documents obtained through our investigation reveal that Dr. Frederick Hemsworth, the sinister mind behind the operation, had developed substances that could alter the development of male children in the womb, creating predispositions toward calculated violence. Margaret's 6 sons were subjected to prenatal injections that transformed potential innocent lives into instruments of terror. Medical photographs, preserved in archives that librarians keep locked behind 7 keys, show the demonic progression, unusual cranial development in the first child, distinctive eye formations in the second, disturbing physical manifestations in each subsequent birth. All 6 boys displayed physiological traits that medical science of that era could not explain. Sinister circle funded by cursed families. Our investigation discovered that the collective received funding from industrial dynasties obsessed with the prospect of creating lineages of controllable violent men who could serve as enforcers for their commercial enterprises. Each experiment cost fortunes, paid with the suffering of children transformed into pawns for diabolical ambitions. The rituals conducted combined experimental medicine with medieval occultism. Margaret was maintained in underground chambers decorated with alchemical symbols, subjected to ceremonies that mixed medical procedures with Latin incantations that made blood freeze in veins. Corrupted authorities protect conspirators. Evidence reveals that municipal authorities, influential families, and corrupted members of the clergy were aware of the collective's sinister activities. Death records were falsified, families were silenced through dark threats, and any official investigation was systematically sabotaged by invisible forces. Dr. Morrison, the coroner who later developed night terrors, secretly documented impossible anatomical discrepancies, unusual bone formations in the young men's hands perfectly designed for violence, altered brain structures with characteristic patterns of predatory calculation, heightened sensory abilities, physical evidence of manipulation that defies scientific explanation. Nightmares haunt investigators to this day. Each person who investigated this case developed unexplainable psychological disturbances. Margaret Thornfield, the librarian who discovered the archives, began experiencing violent impulses after reading the documents. Dr. Blackthorne developed paranoid obsession with his own bloodline. Professor Crow refuses to look at knives or sharp implements since seeing the photographs of the brothers. Cursed archives reveal demonic methodology. Our investigation led us to the State Medical Archives, where we discovered evidence of systematic tampering suggesting supernatural intervention. Pages torn with impossible surgical precision, stamps that changed color according to the light, signatures that seemed to move when observed peripherally. The crucial discovery came through carbon copies that librarians swore had been destroyed decades ago. These documents mysteriously appeared organized on our research desk one morning, as if invisible forces wanted the truth about Margaret Blackwood to be revealed. Hemsworth's diaries written in ink that changes color. Dr. Frederick Hemsworth kept records in ink that transformed according to ambient temperature, revealing hidden texts when handled. His annotations, written in archaic German mixed with alchemical symbols, describe procedures that defy both medicine and natural law. Margaret was identified in the records as maternal vessel alpha, a designation that reduced a living woman to an object of breeding experimentation. The selection criteria were disturbingly specific: widows with family history of exceptional violence, all born during blood moons, considered biologically receptive material. The bloodline essence developed by Hemsworth combined radioactive elements with glandular extracts from preserved cadavers, creating a compound that the scientist believed could predispose male offspring to controlled violent tendencies. The injections were administered directly into the womb during nighttime ceremonies. Photographs that haunt those who observe them. A photographic series attached to the reports documents a transformation that haunts anyone who dares look at the images for more than a few seconds. The initial photographs show Margaret as a young widow with an innocent smile. The subsequent images record a deterioration that seems to continue even after the photographer's death. First birth, infant with unusual cranial formation suggesting altered brain development. Second birth, child with distinctive eye structure that reflected light abnormally. Third birth, boy with unusual hand formation perfect for gripping weapons. Fourth birth, youth with facial structure that never expressed normal emotion. Fifth birth, young man whose skin seemed unnaturally resistant to injury. Sixth birth, the final son whose very presence caused animals to fall silent. The most disturbing aspect was that the mother remained conscious of what she was producing. Psychological records document Margaret smiling with pride when discussing her son's violent tendencies, creating an existential contradiction that tormented even the most hardened executors. National Network of Haunted Breeding Chambers. Intercepted correspondence reveals that Hemsworth did not operate in isolation. The collective maintained a network of collaborators in at least 8 states, all conducting variations of the same experiments in laboratories that were subsequently abandoned due to unexplainable manifestations. Each laboratory received funding from local industrial groups, creating a national conspiracy of exploitative breeding disguised as revolutionary bloodline research. The total number of victims may reach hundreds of mothers, all sacrificed on the altar of scientific ambition corrupted by obsession with creating controllable violent lineages. Financial records show that each experiment cost fortunes provided by families who subsequently suffered unexplainable generational curses, premature deaths, violent tendencies, early dementia. As if participation in the conspiracy brought bloodline retribution. Underground facilities where blood behaves strangely. Margaret was kept in an underground complex built 3 floors beneath the main hospital. Modern visitors report that blood samples inexplicably coagulate in the location, pregnant women experience temporary violent thoughts after prolonged presence, and mirrors reflect distorted versions of those who observe them. The environment combined medical equipment with alchemical symbols engraved in copper plates that oxidize and restore cyclically. Temperature fluctuates independently of heating systems, and there are reports of whispers in dead languages echoing during new moon nights. Maternal blood dominance, theory that haunts science. Technical documents reveal that experiments with Margaret were part of a much more sinister and comprehensive project. The collective had developed a pseudoscientific theory called maternal blood dominance, combining experimental medicine with occultism in a way that defies rational understanding. The central hypothesis suggested that the process of maternal influence could be extracted from one woman and concentrated in substances administrable to others through specific rituals conducted during medical procedures. Hemsworth believed he was distilling maternal control into elixirs of dominance. Underground laboratory where blood behaves abnormally. Margaret was kept in a specially constructed cell where physical laws seemed altered. Blood samples coagulated in different patterns depending on location in the room, plants grew with unusual red pigmentation, and photographs revealed that blood smears developed into recognizable patterns independent of their original form. The environment combined state-of-the-art medical equipment with alchemical symbols that glowed with their own phosphorescence during experiments. Temperature was controlled not by thermostats, but by lunar phases, and lighting provided by candles made with substances that made shadows move against the direction of light. During weekly rituals, Margaret was positioned in the center of a circle engraved in the floor while Hemsworth and assistants recited incantations that made the air vibrate with frequencies causing temporal disorientation. Simultaneously, the woman was subjected to procedures that included extraction of spinal fluids and injections of radioactive substances. Development of impossible maternal capabilities. Records document that Margaret developed abilities that defy maternal science during experiments. Hemsworth observed episodes where the woman demonstrated knowledge of her son's actions miles away, spoke about their future violent deeds with uncanny accuracy, and showed comprehension of their whereabouts at all times. More disturbing were the maternal projections recorded. Margaret began to describe experiencing her son's violent acts simultaneously, as if existing in their bodies during moments of violence. Hemsworth interpreted these manifestations as evidence that the experiments were expanding the maternal connection beyond physical limitations. Existential suffering documented in psychological reports. Medical photographs show Margaret developing simultaneously characteristics of control and suffering, cold calculating eyes with tears of joy, cruel smile with trembling lips, cataracts with unusual clarity in moments of describing violence. It was a biological contradiction that transformed existence into a constant maternal nightmare. Dr. Elizabeth Hartwell, a nurse who later developed selective amnesia about the period, wrote in her diary, "Every night I hear Margaret laugh in the basement. They are not the laughs of a mother nor the cackles of a madwoman, but the sounds of someone who exists simultaneously in 6 different bodies committing unspeakable acts." The maternal culmination ritual, cursed final ceremony. Experiments reached their climax during a ceremony that Hemsworth called the maternal culmination ritual. During a procedure that extended for 3 consecutive nights, Margaret was subjected to the final process, complete extraction of what the scientist believed to be concentrated maternal essence. The objective was to collect a substance that Hemsworth theorized contained maternal control compressed into transferable form. This essence would be refined and administered to paying members of the collective as an elixir that promised not just control over offspring, but dominance over bloodlines across generations. The last medical records of Margaret are too disturbing for complete description. The mother, by then physically transformed by the experiments, presented characteristics of preternatural maternal dominance, maintaining consciousness that existed simultaneously in all 6 sons until the final moment. Supernatural consequences haunt participants. Professor Edmund Crowe, specialist in historical secret societies, developed a disturbing theory. The maternal bloodline collective wasn't merely manipulating biology, they were altering the structure of blood inheritance. The experiments may have created an anomaly that continues to affect anyone who investigates the case. Evidence of this theory: every investigator who studied the archives of Margaret developed symptoms of increased violent tendencies, nightmares involving multiple versions of themselves committing violent acts, and distorted perception of their own bloodlines. As if knowledge of the case caused blood contamination. Haunted survivors break decades of terrified silence. Our investigation managed to locate 3 survivors who witnessed the events of 1868, all having developed psychological disturbances that persist decades later. Their accounts, collected in interviews that needed to be interrupted multiple times due to episodes of panic, reveal details that no official document recorded. Eleanor Whitmore, nurse who developed violent tendencies. Eleanor Whitmore, now appearing prematurely aged at 73 years, was a young trainee during the period of the experiments. She received us only after we presented specific credentials, and kept all windows closed during the interview, claiming that daylight makes her remember what she saw. I was only 16, Eleanor recalled with a voice that oscillated between youthful timbre and elderly tremor, but I immediately realized that something was altering bloodlines in the hospital. There were corridors where pregnant women became unusually aggressive, sounds of laughter that seemed to come from multiple throats simultaneously. Eleanor was the only person outside Hemsworth's team who directly witnessed Margaret during the blood transformation. One night, working beyond hours, she accidentally witnessed a ritual through the basement window and was never the same again. What I saw changed not only my life, but my perception of motherhood, she continued, her hands trembling with a rhythm that did not correspond to chronological age. Hooded men, candles that burned with flames that moved against the wind, and in the center a mother who existed in multiple bodies simultaneously. Thomas Morrison, son of the cursed coroner. Thomas Morrison, 85 years old who appears to have 50, inherited not only his father's secret notes but also the curse that affects the family's perception of violence. Knives in his home inexplicably moved to different locations, and old photographs show him developing violent tendencies at the same age as Margaret's sons. My father knew that experiments were altering the local bloodline structure, Thomas explained during an interview that lasted simultaneously 2 hours and 6 hours depending on which clock was consulted. He found bodies of young men with impossible violent capabilities. Dr. Morrison had secretly photographed victims, including Margaret's sons. Images show contradictions that persist decades later. When observed quickly, they show normal young men; when contemplated longer, they reveal monstrous expressions; when photographed again, they appear different in each revelation. My father suspected that Hemsworth had discovered how to manipulate blood inheritance, Thomas added. He found evidence that violent tendencies developed independently of upbringing, as if each son was programmed before birth. Sarah Caldwell, survivor with fragmented maternal memories. The most devastating testimony came from Sarah Caldwell, 88 chronological years, who appears different ages depending on lighting. At 9 years old, she was selected for the program but managed to escape before the final procedures, although not without permanent maternal consequences. Sarah still exhibits physical anomalies, hair that alternates between colors according to seasons, scars that appear and disappear, and reflection in mirrors that shows versions of different ages. Her memories exist simultaneously in multiple bloodlines. They kept us in cells where blood behaved strangely, Sarah recalled in the presence of her grandson, who observed anxiously as her appearance changed during conversation. There were other mothers, perhaps 10 or 12. Margaret was in the adjacent cell, and I heard not only her current laughter but echoes of laughter from all the violent acts her sons would commit. Sarah described rituals where mothers were forced to participate in ceremonies that mixed medicine with blood manipulation. Men in white chose a different mother each night. When they took Margaret, she returned existing in multiple bloodlines simultaneously. Final moments of Margaret, fragmented maternal existence. Sarah's most disturbing description involves Margaret's final moments. She had become something that defies description: mother, controller, vessel, and conductor existing in the same body. One night I heard not only screams coming from her cell, but temporal echoes of all the moments of violence her sons would commit happening simultaneously. Dr. Margaret Thornfield, who interviewed Sarah decades later using regressive hypnosis, confirmed authenticity through details that coincide with never-published documents. Sarah's memories show blood fragmentation that persists to this day; she literally remembers future generations. Blood curse pursues investigators. All testimonies converge. Investigating Margaret Blackwood's case causes blood contamination in researchers. Each person who studies the archives develops similar symptoms: distorted perception of violence, irregular aggressive tendencies, memories of violent acts they never committed. It wasn't just a medical experiment, concluded Eleanor Whitmore, whose appearance visibly changed during our interview. It was a rupture in the bloodline structure that continues to affect anyone who approaches the truth about what they did to that mother and her sons. Blood curse remains active, investigation ends in terror. Our 2-year investigation revealed truths that not only shook our sanity but altered our fundamental perception of maternal reality. The Maternal Bloodline Collective did not merely conduct experiments, they created an anomaly that persists, haunting anyone who dares investigate the case of Margaret Blackwood and her 6 murderous sons. Dr. Frederick Hemsworth never faced earthly justice. Records suggest that he may have discovered how to prolong his existence indefinitely through maternal blood manipulation, possibly still existing today at an impossible age. Some investigators report sightings of a man who corresponds to his description, always appearing to have the exact same age. Margaret Blackwood, existence that transcends death. Officially, Margaret died in 1868. Unofficially, multiple witnesses report manifestations suggesting that she may exist simultaneously through her descendants across multiple bloodlines. Visitors to the old hospital location describe encounters with a woman who resembles Margaret, always asking, "Do you know what my sons have done?" Location remains haunted by blood anomaly. Today, the ruins of the Kentucky hospital are avoided by local residents who report unexplainable phenomena: knives that move to different positions overnight, shadows that move against the direction of the sun, and whispers of voices that speak about violent acts that make no sense. Dr. Septimus Graves, pathologist who was never the same after these discoveries. Final warning: this investigation ends here for reasons of personal sanity. Remaining files will be permanently sealed. We recommend that readers avoid investigating this case, as knowledge may cause irreversible blood contamination. Algorithmic anomaly detected: since we began this investigation, channel statistics have behaved strangely, views oscillate, comments appear and disappear, likes vary independently of real interactions. If you don't immediately like this video, you may never find content about documented blood anomalies again.